All right, well, it's a couple of minutes past 11, so I think we'll make a start and people can join and catch up with us as they go. So good morning, morena, kia ora everybody. My name's Harvey Brooks. I'm the Executive Director of Wellbeing Waikato, as we are now known. Thank you very, very much for joining us today. What we're going to do is give a little bit of a background to our mahi on housing affordability. Then the team from Veros will present the work that they've been working on. What we'll do is if you have questions and answers, please put them in the chat. We'll monitor those and then we'll go to them after the presentations today and address those. And by all means, keep putting questions and comments into the chat as we go along. The recording, the hui today is being recorded. So if you're not comfortable with that, I suggest you turn off your camera at this point so that you can still participate along with us. The recording will be available on our website and socials by the end of the week, and all the documents that we're referring to this morning are already on our webpage, so you can go and look at those at your leisure as soon as you like. So I'm just going to start us with a karakia, and then we'll get into the hui. He karakia. Whakataka tahau ki te uru, whakataka tahau ki te taonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā tara tara ki tai, e hi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhunga, haumi e, hui e, taiki e. All right, well, thank you again, everybody, for joining us. It's great to be able to share the work that we've been doing on affordable housing in the Waikato. Today, I'm going to be joined by Morgan Jones and Paul Spurdle from Veros, who we commissioned jointly with Futureproof and the Waikato Housing Initiative last year to help us to better understand how to improve housing affordability. Before we get on to Morgan and Paul, I'm just going to give a little bit of a primer and a background on who we are, if this is your first interaction with Wellbeing Waikato, and also the background work that we have done on housing affordability to date. So you might have heard of the Waikato Wellbeing Project. Well, as of February this year, we are now an independent charitable trust, doing exactly the same mahi that we have been doing for the last 5 or so years, but standing on our own 2 feet. And continuing that work. So what do? We're about regional intelligence, about what's most important to households in whānau, looking to identify risks early in terms of what affects well-being for people, hapori and communities, surfacing underlying drivers, not just reporting on symptoms, and then, as we're doing today, convening government iwi, councils, community organisations and the private sector around decision useful insights. And you can see some examples of the reports and the work that we have been doing for the last 5 or so years. So just moving on then to what we are about. If you just forgive me for a second, I'll just make sure that the people who are trying to get into the hui are admitted. So there's lots and lots of different frameworks around about well-being and sustainable development. And obviously we started with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and those are still very, very important, not only to the Waikato and New Zealand, but obviously the world. Where we've got to, though, is to try and keep it as simple and direct as we possibly can. And there's a quote on the screen that you might recognise for those of you who are a little bit older. And that is from Norm Kirk from 1969, where he said basically there are 4 things that matter to people. They have to have somewhere to live, they have to have food to eat, they have to have clothing to wear, and they have to have something to hope for. And for us, that really does capture the essence of Wellbeing Waikato and what we are about. Alongside that is an image that you might also recognize, Maslow's hierarchy, and I think really what Norm Kirk captured a long time ago, more than 50 years ago, is the essence of Maslow's hierarchy. We have to have those basic foundational needs in place first in order for us to be able to thrive. So for us, really, affordability is the key to well-being. And if we take that idea, and I should say too, just when I say that, I'm not saying that everything has to be looked through the lens of a market economy and money, but for most of us, that is the life we live. And so it is important that we look at real life and the real choices and the real decisions that people make. So if we look at that for a second through a sort of a lens of, well, what does affordability look like for the household? This image here, if you imagine this is a typical household budget, the whole screen is a budget. And then you can see housing in terms of mortgage and rents takes up a big chunk of everybody's budget. I think we know that. The average in the Waikato is probably in the high 20s in terms of percentage of your income. In some places it's up above 40%. And that's the first thing you have to pay every week or every fortnight or however frequently it is. From then, and that's been increasing over time as the relative prices of housing versus incomes has continued to increase. And the more it increases, the more the fewer choices people have are not other options in terms of their well-being. And those choices, you can find those in things like the Household Economics Survey. Ipsos do a very good survey on this every 6 months. Those are the essentials such as power and heating, transport, water, gas, education, and broadband. Those are the things that typically have to be paid. Transport in this image is red because of the Iran conflict, because it's got more expensive. Once you've done that, then you go to the supermarket or wherever you buy your kai and you buy some food. And then after that, you're left with something residual for health. And that's, roughly speaking, I think why we have some real challenges in many of our households and communities these days around things like food and health, because the cost of housing is pushing those things right off the edge in terms of the household budget. This is an image from the Waikato Housing Initiative, and it's the housing continuum from homelessness on the left right through to market home ownership on the right. And then what I've done is mapped alongside that some reference incomes for different districts in the Waikato region. Not all of them, just some of them. And you can see those there with the triangles. And so we've got Waikato region there in the red, the Waikato district, Hamilton City, Waipa district, and Matamata, Piako. They all sort of converge around about the $115,000, $120,000 level. If we then compare that on the bottom to indicators of housing affordability, whether that be 3 to 5 times the household income or rental at 30% of income, for those kind of incomes that we see in the Waikato region, an affordable house is somewhere between $360,000 and $600,000, or about $692 a week. Now, the median household house price in the Waikato is substantially beyond that at the moment. So at the moment, we've got a difference between what families can afford and what the market is providing, and we need more in that market affordable space in order to bring affordable housing to more people. Now, folks, I'm just going to take a single moment. Am I suggesting that social and public housing, supported housing, emergency housing, and homelessness are not significant challenges? They absolutely are. But for the purposes of this work, what we asked was, how can we make housing more affordable for whānau who are earning a reasonable income, something like the median income in the Waikato, which is around about $90,000 to $110,000 a year, and how can they be helped to afford the median priced house? Paul, I think you've just come online. Could you just turn your microphone off, please, so I don't get a delay? What's the impact of of these high prices? Well, this is work that we completed late last year, and this report is online at our website as well. And it took existing information and looked at the relative affordability of houses in the Waikato region. And as I said, the two real factors there are what do households earn in terms of income and what do homes cost to buy. It's all around medians, and I must just say that as soon as you use the median of anything, you are somewhat hiding behind statistics, because obviously if it's the median, then half of the population is above it and half of it is below it. But for the purposes of illustration, so the left-hand diagram shows you changes in house prices and income over the last 30 years since 1995. So back in 1995, the median house price in the Waikato was around about $130,000, $140,000, only 30 years ago. And now it's around about $700,000. So up until around about 2007, the median house price in the Waikato only cost about 3 times the median household income, which by an international definition is affordable. By 2012, that had gone up to 5 times, which is still affordable, but obviously getting up there. And now it's sitting at about 6 or 7. It's come back a bit in the last year or so, but it's still, by any measure, unaffordable. Demographia, the international group who look at this, would define that as extremely unaffordable. Because it has all those impacts on the household budget, you can't buy as much of anything else as a result. On the right-hand side is a little bit of work we did to convert that into something which I think is much more real. How long will it take you to save a deposit for a house? So if you're the median, if you earn the median income in Hamilton, trying to buy the median house with a 20% deposit, how long will it take you to save that deposit if you can save 10% of your income every year? So the answer at the moment is in Hamilton, that'll take you a bit more than 15 years to save that deposit at that rate. That's a long time. But let's just imagine, for argument's sake, that the rate of house price increases that we've seen over the last 40 years, which is about 7% per annum, continues into the future. And let's imagine that the rate of salary and wage increases, which have happened over the last 40 years, which is about 4.2%, continue into the future. So that's 17 years today. In 10 years becomes 21 years. And in 20 years becomes 28 years. So the risk is that what we're saying to our kids and our grandchildren is that if you start saving when you maybe leave your tertiary training at 21 or 22, is that you won't be able to buy your first house until you're in your 50s. And that's a very, very big thing to be saying to anybody. And it has some real potentially negative effects in terms of social cohesion, in terms of the idea of families being able to live and work and stay in the places that they live, and on the extent to which people feel that they are part of society. So that really, really drove us to then ask the question, well, if that's the situation, what would it take to make housing more affordable in the Waikato region? And we don't mean that in some big academic way, something with complicated formulas and things that sound completely unachievable. We really wanted to be practical about this. And that's why we asked Veros to come on board. Now, before I ask Paul and Morgan to take us through their slides, I just want to stress that we've come up with some practical options here. There are some really, really big things happening, whether it's the RMA reform, the Going for Housing Growth program, the work on infrastructure funding and finance. Those are really significant things, and they are really, really important, but they'll take a while. What we're really looking for here are things that the Waikato region can do, and many of you on the call today can do, that could start to make a difference in a much, much quicker time frame. So Paul and Morgan, I hope you're on board now and everything's good. And if I hand over, can I just get you to turn your microphones on and check that you are definitely there, and then I'll hand over to you.
Can you hear us, Harvey?
Clear as a bell. Thanks, Paul.
Nice. Hello, everyone.
Right.
Good morning. My name's Paul Spurdle, and if you can see the gentleman next to me, this is Morgan Jones. We both work at a company called Veros, and I think we jumped onto this project sort of mid last year with Harvey, and yeah, really excited to run through some of our findings. Morgan and I we'll take turns talking through, I guess, our slides. Harvey's the master of them, so you might have a few awkward next slides as we move through them, but it's just the way it is. So what this slide here is kind of puts the challenge into context. So around November last year, there were around 3,200 homes for sale in the Waikato, and of all of those homes, only about 14% of them were under that definition, which Harvey's covered as being affordable, that 30% of gross household income. And affordable is a relative term, and we'll probably talk about that quite a lot through here around this is all based on median, it's all based on statistics, and it means different things for different people. And when you're looking at the housing ecosystem, it is often quite different in terms of different people's perspectives, household incomes, their own situation. But I guess for this type of work, we typically do use that median, that average household, that typical family that lives down the street, because that's where we can, I guess, make some good evidence and objective decisions from. Next slide, Harvey. This is another graph to kind of set the scene that in terms of new builds, which is obviously our new supply coming onto the market, and we'll talk about this a bit later, but new builds are actually, from an affordability perspective, really crucial for exactly what Harvey was talking about, where often the most unaffordable part of owning a home is actually saving the deposit. And because new builds often only require that 10% deposit, they can half the time of getting that deposit required, which means actually new homes have a really important place to play in terms of providing affordability. But at that same time, only 7 on the market actually sat within that affordable price point. So that kind of sets a bit of the context around, I guess, what we're dealing with from an affordability perspective. Next slide, Harvey. Harvey, you there?
Yes, I've done it.
Isn't updated on our end. There we go.
There we go. I'll speak to this one really briefly. And again, Harvey's overviewed this. We're going through, and we'll continue to go through, significant legislative, economic reform change. It's election year. Even in the last couple of days alone, you would have seen announcements that will take effect from 1st of April next year around major changes to the accommodation supplement for private housing, and also the IRS income caps in terms of what will be paid by people in the public housing and community housing system. So there's a lot of change going on nationally. Probably one of the biggest ones that I'll just draw everyone's attention to there is the planning reform. So we've had quite a rigid planning reform in New Zealand for a number of years, decades, really post-war now, that has driven standalone properties, minimum site sizes, 2 car parks, and a whole range of other rules that have forced us to have probably a monotonous housing style across large parts of New Zealand. Those have been shaken up in the last 5 years in a generational shift, and that MDRS, the medium density residential standard, is now the new baseline for a lot of areas within Hamilton City, Waipā district and Waikato district, in terms of across a lot of the residential zones that will allow for a lot more intensification and development and different housing types that we haven't really seen before for many, many decades. Another one just down the bottom, the infrastructure funding at the moment, like what we're seeing as central government, and this should be resolved prior to the election later this year, changing from a development contribution, financial contribution environment to a development levy, so that every house, no matter where it is across an urban area, will be paying the same development levy for new growth infrastructure. So a lot of change ahead. Next one, thanks, Harvey.
So how we approached this project was, as Harvey said, we wanted something that was really pragmatic and practical and that could actually be delivered. I guess no one's under any illusion that this is a multi-generational, really complex issue. And it's not just a New Zealand problem, it's a global problem. We certainly don't have all the answers. Fixing it's going to take 100 different changes in 20 different sectors that relate to our housing ecosystem. So what we focused on is, I guess, what are those things that at a Waikato region level can we control on the short to the medium term and actually have an impact? So our focus was really on market housing. And this was, these are the hardworking Kiwis, your nurses, your guys who work in down at Mitre 10, those guys that are putting in a decent week's work but still can't get ahead. We focused on new housing a lot, and I covered that just a bit earlier around, because one of the biggest affordability issues is ability to save that deposit. We focused on some interventions and some changes that actually relate to everyone. So from the biggest developers who are delivering, hundreds of sections to who we kind of call Bob and Betty, which is your standard mum and dad that just live down the street and want to build a new house or put a granny flat on their backyard. And then, as I mentioned, we wanted something that was really actionable within the Waikato region. Next slide, Harvey.
So what we'll do here is we'll just take you through a couple of slides of just our process so you understand what we've done, and then we'll get into the findings. So this one's really, we met with over 30 stakeholders across these different categories. So developers who are the ones investing the capital, finding the sites, trying to figure out what the market wants and then bridging that gap. A lot of group builders as well. So again, they have a really good line of sight to buying preferences. What does the market want? What can the market afford? They have structures where they hold people's hands and help them fill out forms and so on for new homes. Local government, really important part of this. Mainly as a regulator, but a whole bunch of different levers that they can pull amongst the system. Valuers, banks, first-time buyers, and land development professionals, that's surveyors, planners, architects, a whole range of others. So generally our process was one-on-one interviews with a blank canvas or a blank page starting perspective, so that we didn't lead the discussion, we didn't try and introduce any bias, and we got some really raw feedback, which we will jump onto on the next slide. Won't read through all of these, but our process was to capture as many statements, quotes, and so on as possible to inform the different perspectives at the front end. A lot of people that we spoke with said, I will be really blunt, I'll be really honest, but I want to only provide this feedback on the basis that it remains anonymous. So I'll tell you everything, but don't put my name against it. So there's a lot of conversations. I'd probably say at one end of the spectrum, drain the swamp was one of them, that actually there's system-wide challenges, that there's no one intervention that's going to actually have a change at all, and we need to stop, reset, and start again, through to a whole range of, I guess, different interventions, suggestions, positive responses, but then also identifying barriers, which a number of them are listed off here. So sitting behind all of this, we've got some wonderful statements and feedback, and that's just a little insight into that. Thanks, Harvey. So this next slide that's about to pop up in a moment is amongst, I guess, all the challenges, all the barriers, all the gritty friction points of people trying to deliver, I guess, new affordable housing, as we've found some wonderful pockets of success and leaders that are actually out there making a difference and doing some wonderful things. So we've listed off a few there down the bottom. And many more. And I see Councillor Tilly Turner on the call. Like, I've been through your place and seen the wonderful, I guess, that the barriers that you're breaking down and looking at housing in a different way. So there's a number of groups there. There's a couple of guys who are leading a project in Peach Grove East under a Living Systems banner. There's a shop from Cambridge of the Bridge Housing Trust, and they've got a wonderful project in Hamilton as well. And then a whole range of affiliated and supportive, I guess, industry collaboration. We've got the Waikato Community Lands Trust and also the Waikato Housing Initiative, just two others there that are all, I guess, putting their shoulder to the wheel on this mahi, as well as others as well. So fortunately, we can move on to the next one, Harvey. We're not starting from scratch, and there's some great stuff happening. Really briefly, I guess our process here, we don't go into a hole for 6 months, then say, here's a report that you can put on the shelf. Is our challenge in this was, how do we get momentum? How do we deliver action? How do we actually give life? Down the bottom right-hand corner was the words to this mahi. So a lot of that feedback is, we've had this discussion before. We provided feedback on this topic before, but nothing happened. So we tried to approach this differently in that early on we did all that stakeholder engagement and got feedback, and we jumped to the finish line and said, right, what are the interventions? What are the solutions? We had a list of over 20, and we triaged those on a basis of things that we can control. So there was a lot of central government or I guess major billions and billions of dollars of opportunities that were largely out of our control and covered by, I guess, others. So things that we can control and have a Waikato-led response. Impact and bang for buck was another, and then short to medium term was another. So that's where we started. Of those 20 plus solutions, we took 6 through to that next stage, and we'll talk about those in a moment. And again, fed those back through our stakeholder discussions, tested them, refined them, and actually took them not from an idea but into prototype testing. So starting to give them life.
So through the through our work, we categorized the key findings into sort of 3 focus areas where we focused our attention, our focus. And so we'll run through the 3 now. So the first was delivering affordable homes is like death by 1,000 cuts, which was really a nod to the regulatory process. And you would have seen a few of those quotes that a lot of the feedback, and a lot of you guys would have been through this process too, I guess, is, it's long, it's uncertain, it's costly. And when there's a consenting or a regulatory environment like that, the private sector and group builders and things, they price risk into it. The more people they require, the more cost that's involved in the project. And ultimately, it kind of slows down supply and actually increases costs and actually worsens the affordability challenge. And then some of the feedback, it's important to stress this wasn't just a bash up on councils. Like when we caught up with councils, even themselves sort of said, look, this part of the process is just a bit crazy. It takes us forever. We have to do that. We have to do that. And so everyone's feeling the impact of that. The next one, Harvey, was around affordability. One part of delivering affordability often means delivering smaller, and what we're saying, smarter homes. And I guess the key example of that is just to the right hand side of the slide there, which shows this is a real example. A typical 3-bedroom house with 1 garage. In 2015, that house was for sale as a house and land package in the Waikato for $350,000. In a similar area, pretty much the exact same house, 10 years later was for sale for $815,000. So 130% increase in 10 years. And the graph there shows below, I guess, how much the CPI or inflation increased over that same period, which was around 40%. So the cost of actually developing land and building homes has far outpaced, I guess, inflation over the last 10 years. Pulling that back to those numbers which Harvey was discussing at the start of the presentation around when housing was actually more affordable is really just going to be a significant task and actually just probably unrealistic. So how do we deliver homes into the market which are smaller, more cost effective to deliver, and then ultimately will be more affordable, was one of the key themes which came out of this and which we focused on. The next focus area, Harvey, was relating to buyer mindset, which is closely related to that second focus area in regard to one part of this is about influencing the supply. How do we make homes faster to build, cheaper to build? How do we put them in places where people want to live? But the other is actually how do we influence the demand side too? And how do we enable buyers to make good choices? How do we get them willing to actually want to buy smaller, smarter homes? How do we get them to actually want to buy new homes off the plans, which are crucial to getting new supply in the market sector going, because the funding requirements from banks and investors, are de-risked around needing a certain level of pre-sales to get things going. So if people aren't buying in volumes off the plan as required, ultimately projects don't happen. So those were the key focus areas, and out of that we pulled together, I guess, 6 key actions, which we'll run through on the next slide. So these are all, I'm sure Harvey's probably spoken to these. These are all on Harvey's website and are in much further detail. We'll run through 4 of them today in a bit of detail. But the first one was an affordable housing handbook. So the intention around the handbook really was to how do we promote this issue and interrogate it in a way which is really simple to understand. We've got all these people who are informing or involved in the housing continuum and the delivery of housing in some way, but they may not necessarily have a real true understanding around what affordability actually means, what it looks like, what are the challenges, and I guess what's their role to play in trying to, I guess, progress towards delivering housing which are increasingly more affordable.
Sorry.
It's all right. I was going to say it's like a waka with paddles waving, paddling in all directions, and the idea behind this was trying to get more of a common language and more alignment around all those well-intended people that are, I guess, participants and interested parties in affordable housing on the same page.
Yep. The new the housing affordability model is something which we will discuss in a bit of detail today, but it's closely related to the handbook actually. It's an interactive tool and calculator which is currently being built now, and I think it'll have its own website, Harvey, which people can access and use.
Yep.
But basically, the intention around the model is that you can be sitting in Tikawiti or in Otrahonga and look at a 3-bedroom home, single garage on this size land. How much is that generally going to cost, and is that affordable for our community? And so it actually takes a bit of real knowledge in terms of the cost of land and construction and compares it to that community. So I guess some informed decisions can be made around the type of housing that's being delivered into those areas. Local government alignment was another one. This really came from the Waikato's got a range of different, probably more territorial authorities than any region in New Zealand. And from a private sector perspective, and even a community organisation like your CHIPS and Habitat and the like, they're working across the region, but working across 8 different councils or 9 different councils with all slightly different rules and different ways of doing things, but they don't necessarily see those boundaries. So just how those councils and as a region we can work a bit closer together to make things a bit easier and streamlined. The next 3, Harvey, were pattern housing blueprint, which we'll get into, but that's basically pre-approved plans for housing, so people can pick them up and deliver them much faster with more certainty, which will ultimately deliver affordability. A Waikato Housing Equity and Impact Fund, which is in perpetuity investment vehicle, basically, which goes forever around recycling capital into projects which enable market and affordable housing, which the private sector just can't get off the ground. And then the last is what's been termed Housemate, which is an online platform which really focuses on that demand side. How do we get first home buyers and second home buyers onto the ladder, and how do we support them to make good affordable housing choices, basically? So we'll jump into a couple of these in more detail.
I'll just add that the interventions that we've landed up with are intentionally balanced across the demand side, the supply side, and then the bit in between, the mechanics of how to get there as well. So things like funding and so on. So we'll dive in into a couple of these. This one here, hopefully this is a term that many of you have actually heard of, because I'll probably say New Zealand, we're doing some really cool things in pattern housing, and I'll talk a little bit more around what that term means. But actually just across the ditch in Australia, in areas, both the US and Canada, for instance, they are one step ahead of us in some respects as well. So what pattern housing really means is that someone will design something, provide those plans available, so either free or at a charge, available to everyone. And if you use those plans, and generally there's a kit of parts that come with them, so they don't all look exactly the same. So different colouring, different materiality, different roof pitches and so on, so they actually do get some natural variation that come with them, that they will, like the title says, design once, build many. So what we're looking at here is speeding up the market, providing increased certainty, increased speed, and also reducing those costs of that kind of front end design cost, the going round and round in circles and so on, saying, right, this has been tested, this has got a streamlined or a no consent pathway, and we can crack on with it. Contractors, builders, everyone has more certainty around what's involved and a certainty of pricing. So we see huge gains here. The New South Wales example, they launched one last year within the first 6 months of putting their plans, and there's a snippet of 4 of them on the right there. So they initially targeted low rise, and now they've gone with a medium and high rise, so a lot more complicated projects. But their low rise work had 21,000 people download and purchase these plans within the first 6 months. What they did is they said that the plans are $1,200, so a little bit of cost recovery and going back to the original designers, but for the first 6 months, we'll knock that down to $1 per plan set. So next slide. Thanks, Harvey. Just to expand a little more on the pattern housing here, we do have the structures and the market opportunity in New Zealand. So already, as we've talked about, we've got this minor dwelling granny flat exemption. So single level, lightweight buildings up to 70 square metres, no building consent, no resource consent. You can get on with it and deliver those. We've got our planning rules. That's been sorted. So this wonderfully enabling planning system now that allows for duplexes, triplexes, unders and overs, walk-up apartments, a whole lot of different typologies that we've never really had before in New Zealand. At a higher level, there's central government legislation, MPSUD and so on, that and more coming that will support this. And at a building consent level, we've got things like multi-proof that allow someone to submit a plan set. It gets reviewed at a building consent authority level nationally, and then you can deliver it. So we've got the structures already there. Where does it fit in the Waikato? So just on the right there, there's 2 images. The top one is, this is across the Waikato, not across New Zealand, so household size. So the majority of the households are a lot smaller than they used to be many, many decades ago. So a lot of 1, 2, and then a smaller amount in the 3 and 4. Our household sizes have shrunk over time, even though our houses have got bigger in New Zealand. So where we see this working is there's a duplex, a triplex, I guess a manor home, which is like a multi-generational or a flatting situation, or a whole range of different examples within that, and then a triplex. So all 3 of those different housing types are allowed and supported under that medium density residential standard, so up to 3 levels as well. So we see that as being a real low-hanging fruit opportunity for a Waikato-led pattern housing solution. So we've tested this with local architects. How do we do it? What does it cost? Do we have a design competition? How do we run through with quantity surveyors, structural testing, fire testing, everything else? We need local government in the room as well, so that from a risk perspective, that they're happy to let the reins go. So we've run through this. We've connected with the government in New South Wales and talked through their lessons as well. We've connected with the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. So I think last year, off the back of a trip to Sydney, Chris Bishop, the minister, said, we need to do this in New Zealand. So we understand that there's now a work stream underway in Wellington at a central government level. So all the ingredients are right. We could either sit back and wait for this to happen at a national level, or there's a real opportunity there where we can actually leap ahead and say, here's a Waikato first solution. Next slide. Thanks, Harvey.
So these are a few screenshots of the affordability model or calculator and how that works. So a little bit of the background to this, like I said, this would have to be best described as a guide, because the way it works is you can see, for instance, take the middle one, the 4-bedroom standalone in Cambridge, is that you can select all these different inputs. So select your location, select your type of home, whether it's standalone, duplex, or a walk-up, number of bedrooms, whether it's multi-story, whether it's got a double, single, or no garage, number of bathrooms, if it has an extra bedroom or study, whether it's infill or greenfield, and then its level of specification, and which is basically like its build quality, and then lastly its land size. So what it does is once you select all those inputs, it goes back into the depths of all this information where it has ultimately the costs of each of those types of things. So where it becomes a guide is that we've engaged with group builders, and just through delivering some of our own projects around, general square meter rates to build different things, the different land values of these different parts of the region, and then how different land sizes influence on that, different DCs across the different parts of the region. So it goes down into it includes every component of the cost of buying land and building a house. And what you can do is it'll then spit out, I guess, for that example in the middle there, Waipa, your dwelling will be about 138 square meters. That would cost $485,000. Then your land would be $430,000, and your house and land value would be $915,000. So the required household income to support a mortgage for that house and land package is $186,000. But the median household income in Waipa is $106,000. So you can quickly, I guess, test different typologies and different land sizes with different, size garages and specifications, and then test where they land within the market from an affordability perspective. So I guess where we see this tool being really useful is just that educational type piece for everyone who's involved, buyers, group builders, people working at councils or in community housing providers, around what type of product being delivered and how does that relate to affordability.
And just saw a question come up. Does this relate to the MHUD calculator? No, we built this from scratch specifically for the Waikato.
Next one, Harvey.
Yep.
I'll talk through this one really briefly. So I'll start on the right, actually, is there's 3 examples. So the top one, this is a quote from Dennis Turton from Trust Waikato. Can you help me create a fund that represents the voice of communities in small town New Zealand and measures success by beneficiary outcomes? He's worked with Bright Light funding to create Te Puna Hapari, which is a finance tool for housing projects across the Waikato. The next one down, Taranaki Housing Initiative Trust and Toi Foundation, they have, and they're probably about 12 months into it now, work underway where they will create a housing impact fund for Taranaki. One that was created in 2024, 2 years ago, Bay of Plenty Housing Equity Fund. That's a real example. It currently has several hundred homes under construction across the Bay of Plenty, from places like Kauro to Tauranga City. And I guess what we're seeing there, and to talk about the Bay of Plenty Housing Equity Fund as a direct comparator, local government. So Tauranga City Council put $20 million of foundation funding in it, led by Trust, Bay Trust, but then all the electricity community trusts and other funders putting skin in the game towards this. So the starting pot of funding was $60 million, with additional finance leveraged above that. And what they've managed to do is deploy this funding, as Paul said, in perpetuity on a recycling capital basis, so that it's there in forever and a day. It's not funds one project and then that's sunk in that project, but looking at progressive home ownership, different models of homes for people, underwriting, a whole lot of different tools. And the key thing here across, I guess, these funds, I'll jump to that bottom dot point there, is enable, grow, support those wanting to take a step into affordable housing, because at the moment the system of banks, they require, what's your known demand? Have you delivered this before? How much, I guess, if we need to liquidate, how much risk of exposure have we got? So in terms of those wanting to innovate and test new markets and so on, the funding system at the moment isn't there yet. Valuers, again, will look at comparative sales or leasing and so on. So anyone that's wanting to innovate and deliver something that's outside the box, something that's not what we call meat and potatoes housing, starts to struggle with a whole range of, I guess, systemic issues. So buying off the plan at the moment, like a whole lot of people have got wonderful ideas, but no one's ready to buy off the plan in this market that we're in at the moment. So I guess on this, what we've done is we've facilitated discussions with a whole range of different major funders across the Waikato that are already participating in this space to varying degrees. They've separately all got together and had a hui about this. And I'll probably say we're in the starting gates of some, I guess, a wonderful potential if this can get across the line. We see it as having a huge impact, beneficial impact of supporting more projects, delivering more affordable homes right across the region. Next one, thanks, Harvey.
So the last one which we'll cover off is the Housemate platform, which was that website built around demand side. So where this concept came from was thinking a few things. How do we support first home buyers or any home buyer in that matter to have the confidence to buy homes off the plans, which, as we mentioned, is really important to support that new supply, particularly for intensive projects, which are like walk-ups and apartments. The second was around how do we make affordability and buying small sexy? How do we make it really attractive for people so that they're actually demanding from the market, I want to buy a really small, like a smaller unit than what's being currently delivered. And therefore, if the demand's out there, the supplier will slowly adapt and start delivering on that. So based off those kind of two ideas, we pulled together a workshop, included a whole lot of first home buyers and some banks and a few other people involved in the housing sector, and we got a company on board called Incredible, who deliver these apps and websites around the world actually, and they built this concept website based on these kind of 4 principles, which was the findings of that workshop and some other work, which was how do we make the guidance around house buying really personalized, so that the person can put in their own information around where they want to live, their own circumstances, and the information that's being provided to them is really relevant just to their financial context and what they're looking for and their own personal needs. That's closely tied to number 2, like how do we ground the website in an affordability lens? So people are only really seeing options which are realistic to their scenarios, and it's not just generic. So it really focuses, I guess, their decision making into more affordable options. The third was around full cost transparency, not just the purchase price. So just buying a house is the first cost. Then you've got your rates, then you've got your insurance, then you've got maintenance of a bigger house. So how do we start to tell the story of those choices and how that actually impacts the full cost of owning a home, and also the length of paying back that debt? So how do we show that to the person so they can make more affordable choices? And that's a bit of financial literacy as well. And then the fourth was around trusted pathways and support, which was basically saying, how do we connect these people who are in the market to real people who are trusted in the Waikato, who can help them when they're ready to reach out to real people. So that Harvey can probably circulate this after the meeting, but that link there is the real link to the website. It's only concept, so I've got some screenshots of it later on, but some of the links don't work. It's set up to try and show the look and feel and some of the key bit of the content. So feel free to jump on and have a look. The next slide, Harvey, is a few of the screenshots of it. So and a bit of the intent. So show the entire journey of the process of buying. Try and make it really local, like I said. Connect with experts. What's really cool, if you do jump on the website, is that if you click that bottom, that chat to homemate, they've built an AI assistant into it, and it is scary fun to play with. So you can ask it all sorts of questions about buying a house and your situation, and it provides you some really good considered advice around doing that. So part of it was thinking, how do we connect to 18-year-olds and 20-year-olds who are sitting at their couch at home? How can they have an easy conversation just to kind of understand their options and some of that journey? So that's been built into it. And you could probably just skip through the next couple of slides, and I can quickly. Yeah. So here's the front page, and here's just some screenshots around what it kind of looks like. And that's it, I think, Harvey.
I was just going to add, so that AI coach or tool is suitable for anyone from 5 years old to 80 years old wanting to understand income levels, housing options, whole range of other things. It's been educated in Te Reo, so there's a whole lot of, I guess, it went through quite a fast evolution from the first cut to where it is now.
Awesome. Hey, thanks, guys. And just on Housemate, I'm tempted to try it live, but I'm a bit nervous too, just in terms of my own ability to not cut everyone off inadvertently. But for people, just as an example, I've shown it to quite a few groups, and you can sit with a group, turn it on, and say something like, let's imagine I'm a whānau in Rahoi Pōkeka. I have a household income of $80,000 a year. We've got $15,000 in the bank. We've got a bit of consumer debt on a car of $10,000. We're looking to buy a house in this price range. Tell me, is it possible? And it talks you through it live. It's quite extraordinary. We need to be very clear. It's not a financial advisor. You still need to get advice and make your own decisions. But as Paul said, I think it demystifies the process, and that workshop we had with first-time buyers was quite illuminating, because there was just so many misconceptions from very, very smart people who were looking to buy their first homes, just about what was and was not possible. And if we can help clear up some of those and give people the power of knowledge, then I think we're doing a good thing. So I'll finish the presentation very shortly, and then we'll move on to some of your questions. So as I said at the beginning, all the documents are online now. Just go to our website, www.wellbeingwaikato.org.nz. Look under the reports tab or under the projects tab, and you'll find them in both locations. Please take a look. These are working documents. We're very, very keen on your specific feedback and how to evolve them from here. Now, Amy, if you're able to hear me, and we can maybe just give us a bit of a handle on any questions and answers we've had, we've had so far that we can talk to.
Great. So at the moment, we don't actually have any questions. So perhaps if anybody does have a question for any of our presenters, just to pop those in the chat and get the conversation started.
Cool. All right. While people are typing away, maybe I'll just talk about where to from here. There we've got something from, I think Trina's got a question. I think, Trina, your question was actually answered immediately by Morgan around the calculator. If not, just maybe just come back and say still got a question. Where to from here? This work was co-funded by Futureproof, and so for people like Tilly and others in the Futureproof area, this is going to the Futureproof leadership group in June. I think it's the 19th of June. To be signed off, and we'll be talking to Futureproof about how they can lead the implementation of that in the Futureproof area, which is the northern Waikato, if you don't know what I'm talking about. We're very, very keen also to speak to all local authorities in the Waikato region. And so the presentation which you've seen today, we're more than happy to, well, I'm more than happy, I won't implicate Morgan and Paul in that, but more than happy to do that presentation again to your local council. I've already had 1 or 2 invitations to do that, which we're more than happy to do. And to any other group, in actual fact, if this is a topic of interest to you, just let me know and we'll come out and have those conversations. As Morgan said, there's discussions going on amongst the community funders around the Housing Equity Fund. We will be looking for co-funders to help evolve Housemate and the calculator further and make sure that those are online and available to absolutely everybody and kept up to date. Because I think if you see what's behind that calculator, there are thousands of cells of data which Veros have brought together. And the last thing we want is a calculator that becomes stale. So we want it to be up to date. And as useful as possible. And we just really want to keep the conversation going. I think what Morgan and Paul have done here is really great work. As they said, it's not the total answer, and there will always be new ideas coming through as well. But hopefully by throwing this rock into the pond, we can create some ripples which will help others come up with their own thoughts and ideas as well. So Amy, any further questions while we've been talking?
So we've got a hand up from Colin. So Colin, did you want to ask your question?
Yes. Can you hear me at all?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so I've been doing affordable housing now for 8 years. So I've got a good working knowledge of what the issues are. And probably the first thing is, under the National Policy Statement Urban Development of 2020, council were legally required to do a commercial feasibility. Now, what you've put up is a good exercise on a commercial feasibility. I made a formal complaint to the council in September last year because they have not been doing any commercial feasibility models on any of their exercises. So I think that's probably one of the first things you need to be raising with the council. What we know is Peacocks is now somewhere between 200 and 300 million over budget. And that means that it's uneconomical for any of the developers to develop the land because the development contributions are so high. And these are all interlinking things. So the council need to step up and actually provide the factual information of what their modelling actually says. What the council document states, or was done by Market Economics, is that land price in 1995 made up 36% of a house. And as at 2024, it made up 58% of a house. And it's the price of the land that's the major concern. Because unless you can get land at the right price, you can't get affordable housing. I'm happy to actually discuss that on a one-on-one, or if anyone else wants to raise any issues. I have got all the working papers. I have been doing work for the new councillors. So what I've got is factual information that may be of assistance to you.
Thanks, Colin. Look, and you and I have communicated before, and you're consistent in your views, and I really do appreciate those. And I think we're on the same page in the sense that, as I said at the beginning, a competitive land market and affordable infrastructure funding and financing are really the big wheels that need to be addressed properly so that we don't get those kind of outcomes that you're talking about in terms of very, very high prices in places like Peacocks. We hope that by developing this work, this is something that will shine light on this and positively encourage councils towards the kind of policy changes that are needed. So we're in that conversation along with everybody else as well. So I can only support what you were saying. And Morgan and Paul, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, I can add to that really briefly, and then there's another couple of questions that I see have come through. So it was really good to connect with you, Colin, as part of the discussion here. And obviously this is something that you're a specialist in and you've been working on for many, many years. Part of that local government alignment action we see is really, really important. Like you've touched on, local government not probably necessarily understanding the development economics, the holding costs, the cost of infrastructure, like Peacocks, if you build it all at once, the implication that some of these things have. So part of our recommendations there are actually trying to bridge that gap between the private sector and local government. So there's probably a better understanding of each other. So it's not just one direction, but things like if there's a delay when you're waiting for titles at 223, 224C stage, that they understand holding costs, funding costs, everything else. If they slap down like a consent someone raised with us, 26 townhouses in Hamilton East, 2 stories, exactly what the district plan wants, 129 conditions on a resource consent. So probably just more alignment around understanding the cost, some of the frustrations and so on of each other, so that I guess we get less friction and more productivity out of that whole system. Maybe jumping on to those next questions. Not sure if you're going to read them out, Amy.
Yes, I've got one here in the chat from Keith Gallagher. So in the funding space, you've mentioned a few existing funds. Are there any that are easy to get involved with? Finding out about them is usually by luck or word of mouth. Is there any intention to make them easy to invest in?
Yes, I'll talk to that briefly. You might be able to add something, Harvey. You're bang on. There is a little bit of luck or word of mouth. So I guess the main connection point through the discussion that we had here was a range of funders getting together. It was actually led by Bay Trust out of Tauranga, who had set up the Bay of Plenty Housing Equity Fund, along with New Ground Capital out of Auckland, who are their fund manager and an impact investor. So they facilitated a discussion to go, right, can we get a Waikato Housing Equity Fund up and running? That's something that I think after this, we'd be really happy to connect you in with some key people there. Not sure probably over the last month or so what stage that's got to, but I guess the overwhelming discussion was there's a lot of interested people, philanthropic minded people and funds in the Waikato, and if we can work together and get everyone working together in the same space, there'll be a lot more impact that arises from that. So happy to do that connection after this.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right, Morgan, and kia ora, Keith. Good to see you on the line, mate. You know, there's a lot of bits of this system in the Waikato already. It's just not necessarily joined up to be at the kind of scale which can make the sort of impact that we've seen in the Bay or Taranaki and other places like that. You know, there's a Community Lands Trust, there's Momentum, there's Trust Waikato, there's Well Trust, there's obviously iwi, and I'm not looking to implicate anybody into this who wouldn't want to be involved with us, but there is already a lot of those components, and I think our role is really here to keep convening those groups together and say, think about it from the point of view of a Keith Gallagher. How do you actually engage with this in a way which is easy and can make a difference and gives you a decent front door to this, so we can all make a difference? So our job, now that we're at this point of releasing this work, is to actually keep bringing those people together and say, this is actually really, really important. I don't want to state the really, really obvious, but if we're serious, if we genuinely want an answer to how do we make housing more affordable, this is one of the main tools, and it works because it's already working in other parts of New Zealand. So absolutely committed to keeping this one going. Yeah.
Great. We've just got a hand up there from Tilly Turner. So Tilly, I'll hand over to you.
Just unmute, Tilly. Oh, kia ora.
Yeah. Thanks for the presentation, Harvey. It was really brilliant. And thanks to Morgan and Paul as well for the Vero presentation. I think everything's covered. For somebody who wants to invest in a home, a lot of people don't look at developments because they're trying to just work out how they got to do with what finance they do have, as we did, the example that we got into our bill. And everything that you've got on there is really, really valuable. And I think that sitting in both camps, I was somebody who wanted something different for my big family and built a big intergenerational home. It works really well. We've been in it now coming on 10 years, and it's just served our family so great. But I do like the fact that you were talking about the future proof that's coming to councils. I would like this presentation to be done to report. I'll see the CEO when I go back to see if we can have this presentation done to our councillors before that future-proof presentation that's coming to councils, and also knowing about the amalgamations that are happening. It's so current. It really needs this to happen at the council space. I know there's a lot of shifts, and there has been some cumbersome things that have been happening in that consent space. But I think knowing what's happening in the background will give councillors a lot of freedom to think about how they can loosen up, because we're restricted by by government in a lot of the things that we do. So I now see, being in there for 2 terms now, understanding what councillors have had to deal with and how this new regime that we're getting into by amalgamation will help that immensely, like Morgan and Paul were talking about. We've got so many councils with all the different rules, which is a real clear point. So all of this has to, I think with this amalgamation and everything, it's current. And so if this presentation could be done to the Waikato district in the time that we've got before this amalgamation, I think it'd be great. It's just one of the things we're going to have to do. We need more affordability, and I love all your paperwork. I think it's brilliant. If it was around when we were looking to do the options we were doing, it would have been such an easy process. So I just want to congratulate you on that. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you, Tilly. Well, absolutely. Just get Craig or someone to get a hold of me, and then we'll organise to be up there. I could be there tomorrow if you wanted me to be. And I think you've made a really good point about amalgamation, is that if we think about what's the why for amalgamation, and say the why has to be, or the test has to be things like, will housing be more affordable because of it? And if the answer is yes, then it's the right thing to do. Kia ora. Thank you so much. Amy.
I don't have any hands up that I can see, but we've just got a comment in the chat here from Carol. More of a statement than a question. We need large-scale developments in order to get affordability. It's working across the globe. We are more focused on small developments.
I'll leave that for Morgan and Paul.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And at the moment, if you look just around Hamilton, for instance, there's something like, and maybe Councillor Tilly might correct me, but something like 8 fast-track consents with tens of thousands of homes in them. And if those projects are delivered, if they have affordable housing requirements on them, so one of those first 20 prototyped answers is, can we go and put a 10 or a 15 or a 20% affordability criteria on all these new large-scale developments that are 100 or more homes? So looking at those and getting some real scale and affordability. So I think you're bang on.
Great. Any other questions or comments come through, Amy?
No more, and my hand. Yeah.
Great. Look, I think we're a little bit over time, so we'll probably end it here. I just will say too, there's something Morgan shared with me, a couple of really good publications on smaller houses and downsizing. And what we'll do is put those online so people can have a look at them, because what really is good from those publications is that there is a real demand for smaller houses, whether it's people downsizing because of life course or because they are more affordable. There is real demand out there that just isn't quite being met at the moment. And one of those publications made, I think, which was a very good point, that at the moment people don't have enough trust in new builds. And so we need to build that trust, excuse the pun, so that people have confidence in buying off the plan and knowing that it's not going to be something that needs to be recleared within 5 years and send them broke. So there's work to do on the quality side of things as well, to make sure that people have the confidence to make these decisions, because it is the biggest decision most people make in their lives. It's not insignificant. Okay, well, look, it's nearly 12:15, so we will wrap it up here. Can I just thank you all for coming today? It's been great to have your company and your questions and your insights. It really helps us to both have the confidence, I think, that we've produced something useful, and to keep going and build from here. Can I thank Morgan and Paul for their presentation? It was fantastic. Great insight, and thank you for your work. Actually, it's been really, really great, and we've been pleased to be able to facilitate that with your support. But I suspect this is the beginning of the process, certainly not the end. So I'm just going to finish now with a karakia, and thank you all for coming, and we'll see you all again very, very soon. So he karakia. Kia tau, kia tātou katoa, te atawhai o te tātou ariki o ihu karaiti, me te araha o te atua, me te whiwhinga tahitanga, ki te wairua tapu ake ake. Āmeni. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.